don't you walk the wheel with us? What is the matter, my American friend? What has upset you? Oh. The bad machine doesn't know he's a bad machine. You still don't believe it. You still don't believe you're a bad machine. To know yourself is to know God, my friend. The factory knows. That's why they put you here. You'll see. You'll find out. In time, you'll know.
Oh, I know. I already know. I know that you are a bad machine. That's why the factory keeps you here. Do you know how I know, huh? I know because I'm from the factory. I make the machines.
You're listening to Jim Dynamo's Bad Machine, home of the intellectual smackdown, where thought exists without error and truth knows no compromise. No quarter is asked, and no quarter is given, as the lies that bind us to the bad machine are torn asunder with unassailable fact and unquestionable reason. So put on your thinking caps and strap yourselves in, and stand by for the original man-machine, Jim Dynamo.
Did your worst nightmare come true? You woke up on November 9th, 2016 to realize Donald J. Trump has been elected to be the 45th President of the United States. It's the return of the Third Reich. It's his policies. It's his rhetoric. He's a rapist. Stupid deplorables. I'm moving to Canada. I need a Xanax. Mommy! The complaints and the pathetic whining coming from the conspiracy theory-obsessed Democrat voters, spoiled children, and sore losers. Doctors, lawyers, industrialists, school teachers, government and municipal employees, small business owners, housewives, and professional actors. A virtual cross-section of America is aghast that their deplorable neighbors, co-workers, and family have broken away from their demented worldview to elect a self-made real estate entertainment billionaire mogul. So in shock are 59 million Americans that a greater number of electoral voters refuse to be swayed by their ideology of misdirected fear, gender bigotry, race prejudice, paranoia, and lies. Fear, bigotry, prejudice, paranoia, and lies. 59 million people who betray a stunning ignorance of history, the law, and the political process and society. 59 million people who ignore reality by fabricating a fantasy world where any who would dare question the nonsensical dogmas impressed upon their hive mind are to be attacked with a blind vitriol that would make Heinrich Himmler smile. 59 million people who ignored the last 8 years of failures on the national and international level, who are consumed with the animus and payback that they levy upon the rest of the nation. 59 million people who ignore a career of corruption from Whitewater to Cattlegate to Travelgate to Monica-gate and obsess themselves with scandalous lies told by a mentally ill woman who was paid to fabricate a tale of rape. 59 million people who ignored a failed international policy that destroyed the successful efforts of American servicemen who defeated Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist Iraq, to slander and libel a man who vocally expressed dissent as a private citizen, those very actions in the Middle East, just like they did. 59 million people who ignored their candidate's former administration wanting to build a wall exactly where Donald J. Trump wants to build a wall. Oddly enough, these are the very same people who ignored Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's warnings about Iraq's existing WMD program when George W. Bush repeated those warnings only months later. 59 million people who ignored Paula Jones, Kathleen Wiley, and Juanita Broderick's 25-year assertion that Bill Clinton raped them and many other women were suddenly outraged by debunked claims that Donald J. Trump was involved in the sexual assault on a teenager. The same 59 million people who ignored stained blue dresses and cigar suppositories attributed to the spouse of their favorite candidate feigned moral outrage that a single male, speaking privately amongst other males, engaged in a pussy-grabbing moment of braggadocio, heard in every 6th grade classroom, every high school locker room, and backstage at the Ellen DeGeneres show. These are the same 59 million people who dismissed the hotbed of lesbian sex scandals that took place in Hillary Rodham Clinton's State Department. These are the same 59 million people who were warned about the prohibitive cost increases associated with the unconstitutional Obamacare, 20 million of whom now have seen their premiums increase by 120%. These are the same 59 million people who are mute as their candidates' policies have resulted in the flooding of Europe with a belligerent population of Middle Eastern savages who have unleashed an epidemic of rape across the lands of their ancestors. 59 million people who ignore Hillary Rodham Clinton's close association with the self-declared enemy of the Christian West, the Muslim Brotherhood. 59 million people who accuse the so-called deplorables of violence but ignore the racial targeting of Trump supporters just like they do the 640 black on white hate crimes and 100 race-based sexual attacks, rapes of Caucasian women that occur every day, just like they ignore the 200 jihadi attacks that have taken place in the United States in the last 18 months. 59 million people who ignorantly associate Republican conservatives with the hateful acts of the Democrat-created Ku Klux Klan. 59 million people who pretend their political leaders were not responsible for the perpetuation of slavery and the fight against civil rights. 59 million people who pretend their political leaders were not responsible for America's involvement in World Wars I, World War II, Vietnam, and those who waged the forgotten war in Iraq, the Sudan, Serbia, and Afghanistan, and then accidentally bombed the Chinese embassy during the last Clinton administration. 59 million people who ignore the unconstitutional affirmative action policies which target and inhibit the advancement of a single demographic. 59 million people who ignorantly support the verbatim policies of Adolf Hitler when preferred by their candidate. 59 million people who ignore the undercover videos and exposed emails that reveal the top-to-bottom corruption of the fair electoral process. 59 million people who are more than happy to label their friends, their neighbors, their families as Nazis and racist and sexist because they support a candidate who accurately cites existing laws and Department of Justice and FBI statistics instead of pretending white boogeymen are prowling the streets of America. 59 million Americans who screech warnings about the impending fascist takeover of their lives, who ignored their candidate, who sat in silent compliance, while the president they voted for stole away their constitutional protections with the midnight hour endorsed NDEA. 59 million people who ignore all reality and take in the media spin with a fervor that would make Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels green with envy as mainstream media spokesman charge that Trump voters are voting with their gene pool. 59 million people who openly attack the intelligence, education, and life experience of their fellow Americans who they rely upon daily to serve and protect our society, be they soldiers or law enforcement or emergency responders or electricians or plumbers or construction workers, the very men who have sacrificed generations of their own lifeblood to build and maintain this nation. 59 million people who ignorantly conflate the acts of violence and terrorism committed by members of their own political sect with the unassociated and uninvolved law-abiding conservatives and conservative groups concerned with preserving your constitutional rights. 59 million people who hold 400 million people in the grip of their delusional fantasies and psychotic bigotry with outbursts of selective outrage, intolerance, and smashing of windows, the stealing of campaign signs, and defriending lifelong friends and associates. 59 million people who do not know enough recent history to prevent them from recreating one of the most treacherous national power bases in history, the National Socialist Party of Germany, who abandoned the true democratic principle and leadership to embrace a governing party obsessed with witchcraft, Satanism, and racial bigotry. 59 million people hypnotized and enthralled by the thousands of flickering pixels on their televisions and computer screens, and the friendly voices of their favorite media talking heads and celebrities who childishly parrot the nursery rhyme talking points that end up posted and retweeted on globe-spanning social media. 59 million people who need to learn the rest of us are tired of living in their Norman Lear-styled Revenge of the Social Justice Warrior nerds payback fantasy. 59 million people who do not comprehend the rest of us are tired of being tarred with the statements and behaviors attributed exclusively to the liberal progressive crowd. 59 million people who do not understand that the rest of us are tired of being pushed aside, so third-rate wannabes can be celebrated not as acmes of accomplishment, but as avatars of diversity and false egalitarianism. 59 million people content to see every engine of our nation's success governed and tamped to third-world status as they bow at the altar of industry-crippling American Lysenkoism. 59 million people content to see criminals, drugs, weapons, and terrorism smuggled across our borders by those unburdened by the laws that bind this nation. 59 million people who now stand in shock as their intolerant, offensive behavior is repudiated by the American people in a fair, democratic process that has served this nation for 227 years. 59 million people in shock as their neighbors finally reject their fantasy world that the left pretends in favor for the reality we must all share. 59 million Democrat voters and millions of Republican Party never-Trumpers have now learned who and what they represent is not who or what we are as a nation or amalgamated people. 59 million people who do not realize that millions of immigrants flock to these shores every year to escape the same tyrannies their policies continue to lay the groundwork and install. 59 million people who do not realize the tolerance of the nation that outnumbers it is fivefold, and it possesses enough firepower in legally owned weapons to overthrow any nation on the earth. 59 million people who do not realize we mostly forgive their failures, their bigotry, their ignorance, their intolerance, because we love and respect them, and we know that they only mean well despite their bullying behaviors and frightening naivete. Like the police officer who rushes to assist the media-famous anti-authority activist who has made a name for themselves harassing cops after he is mugged by gun-toting felons, or the high school graduate plumber who rushes out in the cold of night to service an arrogant and insulting millionaire who finds him deplorable. The 59 million other deplorables who are ready to respond and repair the civil emergencies and broken pipes, defying the unyielding entropic elements which would consume all we have built and struggled to achieve. The 59 million Trump deplorables who abide by their Sabbath and respect the laws, and who raise families and run or maintain businesses. They serve in our military, they fight our fires, and they police our streets. And now, in the aftermath of one of the most important elections in our lifetime, an election that will reverberate and define the nation for the next 50 years, 59 million Democrat voters now realize they are surrounded by 341 million Americans, 59 million of whom they rely upon desperately to keep them from dragging us all, 400 million Americans, to the hellfire terminus and ruin that awaits us at the end of the road paved with their best intentions. America has rejected the politically correct globalist approach to life that has conflated putting a transvestite in a woman's bathroom with putting a man on the moon as a groundbreaking step to a brave new future. America has rejected the blame Whitey Obanism, the pay-to-play Clintonism, and the eunuch punching bag style of 20th and 21st century Bushism. As much as we'd all love to let you suffer the trials of your untenable socio-political ideology and watch you attempt to build on a system that has repeatedly failed since Hellenic times, there are 282 million Americans that rely on the 59 million deplorables to keep that socialist paradise at bay for as long as we might. The concentration camps, debtors' prisons, and re-education centers of the old world have no place in 21st century America. The jihadi attacks common to the Middle East have no place here. Breadlines have no place here. State-controlled single-payer medical insurance has no place here. State oversight into how bakeries can or cannot decorate a cake has no place here. State-empowered black fragility has no place here. Elected officials who swear to uphold our Constitution, then proceed to attack it, have no place here. Unaccountable judges have no place here. The cultural Marxist critical theory bigotry and vitriol expressed by 59 million Hillary Clinton voters has no place here. The cancerous 19th century divide and conquer strategy that results in communism has no place here. And on Friday, the 20th day of January in the year of 2017, the looming specter, the red menace that is socialized state tyranny, will be banished from this nation for generations to come as Donald John Trump